This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
Phil! Do you have the stuff to put on the scale I brought?
Chris, why do you have a scale?
Because we're talking about scale on today's show.
Not that kind of scale.
Told you, Chris. It wasn't scale, it was scales, like dragon scales.
Is that why you have dragon scale, shield, and armor?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not letting any red dragons set me on fire like you guys always want. Plus, I bet Chris a cup of Tim Hortons coffee that it would be dragon scales and not scales that you weigh stuff on.
Damn it, man. I guess the next cup's on me.
Both of you are wrong.
What?
Let me ease the weight off of your minds because we're not talking about weighing things or reptile skin, but the scale of narratives. In this, the 372nd episode of the Misdirected Mark Podcast, my name is Phil.
I'm Old Man Logan.
And I'm Chris, and yeah, we're talking about scale today.
Yep.
But before we get to that, we should do the thing that we always do, one thing and announcements. So, Phil, what is your one thing for this week?
I spent something like, I don't know, what is it, like 9 hours playing Minecraft yesterday? That was my Labor Day. Do no labor. So I built shit in Minecraft.
There you go.
That's mental labor. Because it's like fake labor or something.
Fake labor?
But
fake
I built myself.
Labor?
I built myself. This is how you know you're late. You're late in the game. I built myself an entire house in order to learn a new tech pack, because I wanted to learn Botania, which is like this all nature-based tech pack. So I built myself this like house out in this field of flowers, so I would have better scenery instead of my industrial, I don't know what the hell, sky factory thing I got going on at my old house. So I built this house completely from scratch. I built, I broke ground on it on Sunday night and finished it sometime yesterday. It's pretty boss looking. I'm excited for you to come out and see it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I did like Umbran wood, so it's all purple and stuff. Yeah, I think it came out. I think it actually came out pretty well. I got a few more little details to tack onto it, but I logged in a pretty lengthy session of Minecraft, so I got to basically hang online with Rich and Savannah, Jerry, Weregator, Tony. I went and saw some of Tony's shit. Have you been to Tony's place lately?
Yes.
Holy.
Yes.
Like Tony's got some shit going on, like inside that bubble. Yep. Anyway, I got to hang with a whole bunch of the MMPers on Mumble all like for the end of the weekend, which was awesome, and kind of just what I needed. So yeah, it was good. That's my one thing.
Yay!
How
about you? You were watching TV?
Yeah, I did. I watched all of Carnival Row. Carnival Row is wonderful. If you want some neo-noir type Victorian fairy storytelling, like, this is something to check out. It's really good.
Doesn't it star that delightful lesbian girl that was carrying that spanking bench into her house with her partner?
Is that Kara, whatever her name is?
Yeah, isn't she the one from what was that other movie?
Valerian and the Planet of a Thousand Worlds.
Yeah, did you ever see that? Did you ever see that tweet of her and her girlfriend?
No.
Oh, they're carrying in a spanking bench into their house.
By the way, in that show, she is fantastic.
I loved her in Valerian as well.
She's okay in Valerian. Like I
mean, Valerian's an okay movie. Let's not get carried away. So she did fine in Valerian because it was an okay movie.
She's okay.
Yeah.
No, but she acts beyond. Like, she's way better.
Yeah.
In Carnival Row. She's so good as the character, the pixie she's playing.
Yeah.
If you like stories about immigration and the horrors of immigration and refugees, it's a thing to watch. Especially if you like to mix that with magic.
It looks pretty excellent.
Cool.
Yeah, it looks pretty excellent. I kind of wanted to. I saw it, but I haven't had time to watch anything.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's 8 episodes. Go watch it. Orlando Bloom's really good in it too. It's probably the best role I've seen him in ever.
Nice.
Cool. I've heard a bunch of people praising it. So
yeah, it's fantastic, and it's already got a second season on the way. So
I don't know if I'll get to it, but
to relate it to the topic that we're talking about today, the scale of the story is on a small scale, but there's a larger scale narrative going on in the background.
Nice.
That feels much more epic and has like prophecies and mysticism surrounding it.
Ooh, I like a good prophecy.
Me too.
Because I was mess with your head.
And everything. You know how we were talking about intros last a couple.
We talked about introductions.
Was it last episode or 2 episodes ago?
I feel like it was last episode.
Last episode.
I always forget. It was last episode. The first episode, now that I've watched it 3 times, because I've watched the whole thing through, and then I've like told a few people, you have to watch this, watch the first episode. And I've watched the first episode. When you watch the first episode a second and a third time, like you can see all the pieces that they are like seeding and how everything really matters quite a bit to later. It's a quite excellent, man. It is so good. All right, there you go. Bob, what about you?
I read a book.
Like a paper book?
Like a physical hardcover paper book.
Nice.
Entry. Yeah, I actually was almost halfway through it. Thin Air by Richard Morgan, his newest.
Oh, I can love Morgan.
And I had started it months ago and got partway into it and just I haven't gotten back to like I wasn't making time to read for pleasure. All the reading I was doing was for work, you know,
Right.
for Encoded, for
Sure.
freelance, you know, and I was like, I really need to carve out some time and finish this book because my read list is ginormous. It's stupid huge. And so holiday weekend, among other things, I sat down on Monday and I just plopped myself in the chair and I dug my book out and I read for 2/3 of the day, finished the book, excellent book, highly recommended. And yeah, I was very happy to get that done. Very productive holiday weekend for me.
Yeah, that's excellent. I have Gibson's The Periphery, which I'm going to reread. I read it when it first came out, and his new book comes out in the winter. So it's my goal in the next month or two to actually pick up the physical book and reread it, because I very much want to be caught up again before I pick up his next book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, physical book, cool.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
let's
That's
move on
our
to announcements.
Yeah,
Do
I
the
got a
thing.
couple of announcements.
All right, why don't you go first?
First one is The Streets of Avalon is now available on DriveThru RPG. So if you did not back the Kickstarter and have an interest in getting either the PDF, the softcover, or hardcover, you can go to DriveThru RPG. Just look up Streets of Avalon, look up Encoded Designs, however you want to get to it. But there you will find the book available now commercially. And it'll be going into distribution, I believe, in December. What's our next announcement?
What Iron Edda is in distribution currently. Like you can pick it up on Amazon if
Went
you want.
live this week.
You can pick it up at conventions where Studio 2 is distributing books.
Absolutely. So, and it was I believe it was out at Gen Con, but it is now going in through the full distribution channel. So you can go to your FLGS and ask to have them order you a copy of Iron Edda Accelerated if you are so inclined to support an FLGS or you have one in your neighborhood. Or if you just want to get it yourself and you don't have a game store near you, besides getting it on DriveThru, because you can totally do that, you actually also can get it on Amazon.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Good
Nice.
stuff, man. Good stuff. One more, right?
No, 2 more actually.
2 more.
So our forums are up and live, and we have a contest going with them, and I've been keeping an eye on that. There is there's like an introductory thread, and when we have 100 people that are not us that have come to the forums and
And by
joined the
us,
forums,
you mean hosts.
hosts, yes,
Yes, not listeners.
and Rob,
Us. Right.
and of course my iPad went off because my iPad can't help but have Messenger on it. I don't know, and I can't silence it because if I silence it, then we won't get the audio. I
Right.
suppose I can no silence Messenger, right?
Mhm.
Anyways, sorry everyone about that. Just gonna do that.
Anyway, forums.
Yeah, totally forums. There's forums. There's lots of topics on there. I finally figured out how to subscribe to them after like reading Rob's thing about subscribing to forum topics like 17 times. I'm like, oh, I get it now. There's like a check mark. See, it threw me off because if you're looking at the forums to subscribe to this topic thread, you have to click on the check mark box that's already check marked, which is not intuitive.
Yeah, it's a little. No.
So once you click on it, it'll go blank and say unsubscribe from this. Click on this to unsubscribe from it.
Yes.
So it's a little weird, but think of it that way. It's perfectly fine. Go subscribe, join the forums, pick topics. Now I get emails with the topics.
Yeah, that's cool.
When people post to them, it's great.
That's excellent.
It's fantastic. Love it. That's really fun. Have you been there? I was commenting on some stuff yesterday.
I went on. I haven't gotten it worked into my daily routine yet. So I have it open with all my other tabs. So I often will like just skim it. But I kind of need to work into my daily routine, like a moment to kind of go through and shuffle through all the topics.
Yeah, I actually need to reset my password again so I can log in on my phone. I'm logged in on my desktop and my laptop, but not on my phone, and I can't remember what my password is because I'm bad at this game. I'm so bad at this game.
It's a password
do you not have
manager
a-
for.
Do you not have a password? Vault?
Not that's connected to all of my devices.
Oh, you should do that.
I didn't know I could. I don't know how to yet.
Oh, I have a product I could recommend.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of a product called BitWarrant. Very inexpensive, cloud-based, very secure. You put all your shit up there, and then you can get it on every one of your devices.
Neato.
Yeah.
Hey, quick question about that.
Mm-hmm.
Will it let me import my stuff out of KeyPass?
Yep. In fact, I did that. I exported all my stuff from KeyPass, imported all my stuff into Bitwarden, did a little cleanup, right? Organized some things, whatever. And then the cool part is for Android and for iOS, it integrates with the password function, like on your phone. So like when you go to a browser and it says password, it will just go and call Bitwarden and get your passwords. So now, like, I can do it from my phone, from my iPad, and from my from my computer. And I can do it from anyone else's computer because I can just log into Bitwarden from a web browser. So yeah, it's cool.
Cool.
And I think it's only like $10 a year for hosting.
Not bad at all.
I wanted to buy like 10 years of it when I first I didn't want the price to go up, so I was like, shit, I can't buy more than 1 year. Like, yeah.
Last announcement. So we've been talking about new shows, new Twitch shows coming.
Our new sponsor, Bitwarden.
Oh, our new sponsor, Bitwarden. We've been talking about new shows, new Twitch shows coming to Misdirected Mark Productions. An actual play show called The FM Gamers is the one that I am partially in charge of. Me and a couple of my producing friends.
What does FM stand for?
A number of different things.
Okay.
It could mean fail magnificently. It could also mean it could mean any number. The Fighting Mongoose. It could mean a lot of things.
Perhaps you should tune in to find out.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a thing.
It might mean something different every week.
Okay.
That might be the gag.
Is it a weekly show?
It's a bi-weekly show.
Bi-weekly show.
But that starts September 30th.
Oh, neat. Cool.
That's a Monday.
What are you guys playing first?
We are going to play D&D first.
Mm-hmm.
We're playing a game called Spelljammed. It is a mix of D&D plus Spelljammer plus a little bit of Barrier from the Expedition to the Barrier Peaks.
Interesting.
It's a game that I've actually run before, like
cool.
For other people, but I'm going to run it for the crew. And it's going to be not...
Is this the one that you ran a while ago for Jen?
Yeah.
And everyone? Okay.
That one.
Yeah.
That was kind of zany.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one where they almost all died in like some magic shop or something. Like I forget. There was
they almost all died in a house.
That's what it was. A house. Yeah. I knew it was like a small confined space.
I don't know if that one's going to come up again because that one was very specific to one of the characters. Yeah. That was a side adventure based on one of the characters. So we'll see if that comes up again. It's kind of how I just create games. Like there's an overarching plot and then there's some stuff going on.
Will you be GMing the FM?
Yes, at least for the first story.
Interesting. Cool.
But I will be seeing if some of the other cast members would like to run games at times.
Yeah, there you go. The chat room is working away on alternate meanings for FM.
Yeah,
yes.
Flagellant Marsupials.
Yes, that's my favorite right now. Flagellant Marsupial.
That's good. That's funny. All right, cool. So that is that. I guess I will talk more about it next week.
Cool.
Awesome.
The cast and things like that. Start talking about that because there is a cast on purpose. You ready? You ready?
You know what this means?
I should probably trim this back up.
I'm just getting ready.
You got a beverage ready after?
Yeah, you got your coffee.
I got a little coffee in there. Yep.
All right, because on the soundboard it's called Phil's Screaming Workshop.
Okay. Awesome.
Workshop! Sometimes scale is really small, and sometimes scale is really big! Workshop! Do it to make your games better!
But also do it to make everything work good and pick out games that you really like.
Scale!
Don't suck.
That was good. That was really good. So tonight we have a bit of a new idea we're playing around with, which means that we're not going to be as precise as we normally are.
I mean, I guess that sets the bar kind of low. We're not always super precise.
I mean, we're always super precise. That's the thing.
I guess that's true.
We may not be precise,
Not
but we're
tonight.
professional.
I mean, based on
To
your
borrow from another podcast.
based on your scale. That's not very precise, really. Like that's all over the place. In fact, but we're going to explore that idea, this idea of scale. Phil's going to define it a bit more, but at a high level, we are talking about what kind of stakes do the mechanics and setting of a game deal with during play. So we're going to approach this here in the workshop and discuss the idea in the context of setting, mechanics, jamming, and game design. Phil, buddy, old pal, let's get a size of the kinds of scale we want to talk about so we have a starting place for weighing,
Misdirected
Oh
Mark,
man, you did
word
so
scramble.
good when you wrote that.
I know.
I mean, that's half the battle. Like, you wrote it so well.
So, Phil, let's get a size of the kinds of scale we want to talk about so we have a starting place for our narrative weighing to begin.
Yeah, because I did not write that.
I know,
line.
I wrote that scale.
Really good.
I wrote that in there. Damn. Son of a... Son of a... Don't
let it be boy. Don't let it be
Oh,
boy.
yeah,
Don't.
I gotta play this.
Behold, you are in the presence of Definition Panda.
Cool. Let's start our definition about scale by talking about what we're not talking about. Right?
So we're being super precise here, huh?
Super. Well, no, because there is another term for scale that is used in some RPGs, and we don't want to confuse what we're talking about tonight.
We're not
with
talking
that.
about the mechanics of scale.
Correct. So what we're not talking about is sometimes scale is a mechanic that's used in games to represent the difference in size between two combatants.
You know, something like the scale of difference between a mech and a human.
Right. So this is a very Fate thing, right? Fate has it as actually scale.
Yep, Dresden Files has it in it. I mean, MDC versus regular damage, mega damage versus regular damage.
Right. We could actually do a garage as a separate thing
As
on scale.
Maybe
Yeah.
we should.
That'd be kind of fun,
Yeah.
Bob.
Yeah.
Here, hold this
Pin
pin.
that.
Could you put
Ding.
that in? Thanks. The garage version
I
of
got
scale.
a question. I got a question about us pinning things.
Yeah.
Because whenever we take a pin
Yes.
and we pin it to something,
Yeah.
there's a ding. Are we like pinning a metal bell?
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
We're ringing the bell when we pin things.
Because every time I see you take the pin and you poke it into something,
I've
and there's a
actually
ding.
done that one time just now. That's the
Okay,
first time
just-
I've ever done that.
Well, it's probably why it triggered it in my head.
Because Phil
Anyways,
just did it.
yeah,
Good
go
enough.
ahead.
Good enough. All right, cool. All right, so that's what we're not talking about. Is we're not talking about mechanical scale, which I think we may be talking about fairly soon.
Yes.
So putting that aside, what are we talking about? Well, we are talking about how big are the problems, aka the stakes of the game that we're playing. Right. So on the low end, the problems that our characters face are things like making sure they have enough food, not dying in a bar fight, repairing their armor, their damaged armor between fights, things like that. And on the high end, like we're making sure things like the space-time continuum doesn't collapse, right? That the pattern's not erased, that Thanos doesn't snap his fingers.
So are we really talking about stakes then, and how they are affected by everything around it, setting situation mechanics, all that good stuff,
Yeah, exactly. Setting situation mechanics.
based on stakes?
Yeah.
So
And system, right? Because we say mechanics, but system is actually probably, if we were using all of Jason's terms.
yes.
Yes.
I mean, mechanics are the system, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are.
Mechanisms.
I know, but if we were like just, like
So is this really a conversation about scale, or is it a conversation about stakes?
So it's both because sometimes these things get all intertwined.
All right.
Yep. And yeah. So let's go with it from
Let's
there.
talk about how scale can affect a bunch of things, like setting, situation, and mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
So the best example that we could come up with for understanding scale is the superhero genre. I mean, we all know it, right? Like
Yep.
it makes it easy to understand. We know that there's a difference in scale between Daredevil and the Avengers. I mean, maybe not Hawkeye and Daredevil, but the Avengers as a team and Daredevil.
Right. I mean, this will bring up what I will call the Batman conundrum.
Yeah.
Right. Like, why is
What the hell's Batman doing with the Justice League?
Thank you.
I mean, we could talk about.
I mean, that's a side thing, but anyway.
Daredevil deals with mobsters and ninjas and has peak human strength, slightly above average, slightly above human peak agility, and super senses because
Absolutely.
echolocation. And he should be Batman because he has all the Batman.
Correct.
He has like actual bat senses.
Like bat-like senses. Yes.
Yes, Daredevil should be Batman.
Correct.
Correct.
And Batman should be Daredevil. Anyways, the Avengers deal with alien invasions and Titans, like Thanos, and they have the Hulk and Thor.
Right.
So
I mean, they also have Captain Marvel, depending on where you are, right?
that
Like,
is
let's
also true.
let's be clear, right? Like, and to be honest, when you add Captain Marvel in, the scale is even more different for the it skews the Avengers even further over.
Yeah.
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 Cool.
In fact, this genre knows this so well that they have a term for it. There is street level versus cosmic.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like we hear this. I mean,
it's really street world cosmic.
yeah, exactly. So like we know, for instance, Rich Rogers, who was on a handful of episodes ago, right? His new superheroes game is Street Level Heroes.
It is street level heroes,
right? Because he's actually telling you the scale of the game in the title of the game.
Yeah, it's strange because not strange. It's interesting because masks can be any of these.
Yes, masks can be any of these. Yeah, and masks. So masks can be any of these. If we're gonna park that, if we're going to take this for a second, masks can be any of these because masks does not mechanize powers.
Correct.
Right? So powers are actually a narrative thing.
Because masks mechanizes drama.
Yes. So now, for instance, contrast that to mutants and masterminds. So in mutants and masterminds, you can have both a street level game and a cosmic game, and the difference is the point build cost for the characters that you create in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to have a street level mutants and masterminds game, I forget. Don't call me out on this, but I think it's like a 150 to 200 point.
Yeah, don't look at me. I never played that game.
Right. But then if you want to have like a cosmic one, like you go up to like 600 points for a character, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes, and this is the part we're going to discuss a little further. Sometimes the mechanics of the game scale, and sometimes just the narrative part of the game scales. And so I guess that's a fine way to start. So actually, we don't even have that in the notes, but I'm going to riff on it right now.
Yeah, do it.
So
Do it.
yeah, so sometimes games have sometimes the mechanics of the game are at a fixed scale, and whatever it's set at. Sometimes the mechanics of the game don't denote any scale, and it's just the setting and situation that denote scale. Mm-hmm. In which case, then we're getting into something more about fictional positioning and less about mechanics. And other times, on the other end, mechanics have everything to do with the scale of the game. That as the game grows, so the game may have powers that are really, like again, if we look at Rich Rogers' game, the powers for that game are actually very street level. They're small, right? Like you can't blow a building in half with any character in Rich's game, right? Because the mechanical scale of the game is turned down. Where like in a Champions game, if you ratchet up the points, like you could have a character who could crack a moon in half or something.
Yep.
Okay. Now,
can I cite a very good example for this?
Yeah, sure.
D&D is an excellent example of how mechanics and scale changes over time.
Absolutely. D&D is a game that very much has a sliding scale. So, and we know, and in D&D, it's called tiers, right? And it's been around since 3rd edition, right? I don't think
sort of.
Yeah, 3rd edition had the. I guess you're right. It wasn't as defined by bands.
Correct.
Right. It had like 1 through 20 and then stupid level in 3rd edition, right?
I mean, but we all knew in D&D that very similar to what is the 5th edition tiers. Those tiers were very similar.
Yeah. So what we know is that mechanically, the scale of this game changes. So when you are first level, the mechanics, while the mechanisms of the game, the actual rolling dice and stuff like that isn't different, but the things your character can do at first level are different than what your character can do at 7th level, which is very different what you can do at 17th level.
Yeah, and that stuff's all built into the character classes and the spells that you can choose.
Right. The character classes actually scale up.
Also, the monsters and things that you fight and the traps that you deal with, they also scale in tier.
Right. Now, contrast that to Dungeon World, where the mechanics don't really scale, right? You get more stuff as you are a higher level character.
That's true.
But the stuff you get doesn't actually raise you any tier. And the reason you can tell the difference is if you take a 17th level party in D&D and you kill a character and bring them back as a first level character, right? So 4 17th level characters and a first level character.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work at all. Where in Dungeon World, you can have a 9th level party, lose a character, replace it with a first level character, and that character has actually a decent shot in the game.
They can do stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they have as much of a shot at accomplishing things often.
Yeah.
Aside from any narrative positioning that is required from certain like things that have happened in the story.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm just mechanically.
Mechanically, yeah, there's not a lot there. What is it? Dungeon World characters get broader, not more power. I mean, they do get more powerful, but
they widen.
The widen thing is much, if not more, than the arc of their curve going up.
Absolutely. So yeah, they stay at one scale. They just become more diverse. Like they get more moves. They get more options.
I think there's a scale shift in Dungeon World. It's not exactly the same.
I'll tell you,
but it's not as wide as D&D.
There's a subtle scale shift that I noticed from when you ran Dungeon World, not narratively but mechanically, and that is when you get your +3.
That
When you get your +3, now, but here's what happens, right? So when you get your +3 in whatever your main stat is, two things happen. One, narratively, you do that thing more well than often. And two, you stop gaining experience points at the rate you were before.
You do. There's another thing about that game. We're just going to talk about Dungeon World for a second.
Sure.
We like Dungeon World. It's going to seem weird because we had some custom stuff going on in that game, but that custom stuff was based on the idea of the prestige class idea that they have.
Right.
As soon as you get your prestige class, you have a lot more narrative positioning options
Yes.
that are much more impactful.
Yep.
So that is a scale shift.
That's a narrative scale shift.
Well, it's a mechanical scale shift too.
Yeah.
Because you don't have that narrative positioning until you get that prestige class.
Fair.
Because it's not just yours. Tony's was actually one that was out of the book.
Right.
And it affected the game a lot.
Yep.
That's fair. So yeah,
I designed yours based on a lot of the other ones.
Right. So in Dungeon World, we're talking about a very small scale shift as opposed to D&D, which is a
Correct.
very pronounced.
Yes. And those scale shifts are from 4 to 5, from 9 to 10, and from 17 to 18.
Correct.
Although I think the 17 to 18 one is not nearly as drastic as the 4 to 5 and the 9 to 10.
Yeah. So cool. With that definition, let's explore this idea of scale in games and look at what it does in games, as well as how it may make us more interested or less interested in certain games.
Sure, because it's where a lot of people's preferences come from, the scale thing, I would imagine. So, what does scale do? The scale of a game gives us an indication of what kind of things we will be doing in the game. Phil?
Yeah, so are we going to be crawling through a dungeon worried about how long each torch lasts?
Are we talking about first edition D&D?
Or Torchbearer.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Or Dungeon Crawl Classics.
Dungeon Crawl Classics falls into a weird kind of position.
It's really more, am I going to die in this next room?
Am I going to die in this next roll?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not the room, it's the next roll. Isn't the next roll going to kill me in this game?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, is it going to be something like we're like literally counting the ticks of each torch, like in Torchbearer? Or are we going to be working, to keep the great demon in its eternal prison?
Are you referencing your L Hall game?
No, I was just like, just making up some eldritch thing, like to...
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But big scale, right? Like,
yeah, that's a giant scale.
That's giant scale.
So this sets expectations for how this game works. It also allows us to create our characters to make them fit into the world of the game, the setting that we're playing in.
Right. I mean, if our scale is really low, like we're not, I'm not Cedric the heroic who's fought, dozens of battles and, killed, so many people. I'm probably, Cedric the rat catcher.
Probably.
Right. I've caught many a rat.
There are some games that do weird things with that, right?
Yeah, there's some games that play with that.
So, for instance, Eberron, the setting, a lot of times it assumes that you're a part of the last war. And then it has you 3 years after that.
Right. At first level.
At first level.
Right.
Which never made sense to me.
Nope.
Which, just start them at third.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, tell me at first level what the war was like. At second level, tell me what the year after you got out of the war was like. And third level, let's start playing this game.
Yeah, we should make a product that does that.
Little like life path guide.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
and we could kill characters.
Can we
Traveler like?
Can you put a pin in that for the after show so we can talk about how to create an Eberron game?
Ding.
We'll create your background, and then we'll also create the neighborhood that you're living in.
Oh, that would be
in the city of Sharn.
We could make that product.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
That is shit we could make.
That's why I just said we should do that.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's where are we going now?
So we were talking about characters fitting in the world, right? So
yes.
That's definitely a thing scale helps us with.
Scale also gives us an idea of what things matter and do not matter in the game. So
yeah, so like in a high scale game, right? The game tends not to worry about things like food, living expenses, water and rations, right? Like we just like have that shit. And in fact, actually, and I think this is fairly true, right? Like I don't think this is in the rules of D&D, but I think this is how D&D is played. Once you get above the lower tiers, like equipment stops mattering as much. Like I don't know, you tell me because you've been playing. Do you play like 15th level characters counting out rations?
We don't count out rations, but you still, if you don't have the gear to do a thing, then you don't have the gear.
No, that's fine. That's a narrative thing. But I mean, like, if you're 15th level characters and you're going on a quest, do people stop and be like, hang on, I gotta stock up on my rations?
No, because somebody's casting Hero's Feast and everybody's fed.
Right.
I'm just saying, like.
No, that's right.
Hero's Feast is one of the best spells in the game. And people have it by then.
So that's a scaling thing, right? So at a certain scale of character power, we stop worrying about certain problems.
Usually at certain levels in a game like D&D or games that have a lot of magic or access to magic, things like that, that doesn't really care, because that game doesn't really care about you eating.
Correct.
Unless the adventure is something about not having resources.
Right.
Which then it matters, but that's very adventure dependent.
Right. So like contrast that to Forbidden Lands.
Which it matters a lot.
Which Forbidden Lands, like eating is a big deal.
No, I do want to say, like, there's a mechanic in D&D called fatigue.
Yep.
And that takes into account things like starving.
Sure.
Or, being out in the desert.
Yep.
But by the time you're that level, usually magic solves those problems for you.
Exactly.
So
you have a Ring of Warmth.
You have a spell that can fix it.
Right.
There's some magic that can fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, that's actually, that's a good point. That is the way D&D eliminates lower scale problems. Right.
Yeah.
It magics them away.
It magics them away.
Whether it is a cast spell or an acquired item.
Yeah, and awesome. Man, I cannot talk today.
Misdirected mark, word scramble.
I don't know if is that a word scramble? It's a word jumble. Misdirected mark, word jumble. I like how Phil's doing, like, you can't see it unless you're watching on the show. Like, he's doing this word
scramble.
This is why you should watch the Twitch channel.
Just to watch Phil flail about.
It's
Phil so much better now that I don't have a mic.
I know, it's
right?
so
Like
good.
my hands are like free. Anyways,
it gets rid of them.
Magic that shit away.
But it may cost some resources. But often it doesn't. Like, you figure out a way to get around it, and it doesn't cost you any resources.
Mm-hmm.
It might have cost you resources one time. Like, I'm going to spend this gold, or get this spell, or make this choice, and never have to worry about it. Because, honestly, we don't care.
Right.
Because that game doesn't care about that.
Well, the spell is still a resource.
Assuming it wasn't a one-time use.
Yeah.
Like, you got a magic item that solves that problem.
Yeah.
Although, you can only be attuned to a certain number of magic items.
Yep.
Smart.
So, there's always... That game tries to do a thing where it's always costing you a resource or something.
Mm-hmm. Which is good, because at that level, when you stop worrying about those things, being able to get rid of certain problems at the expense of resources makes for interesting decisions. Like, do I get rid of this problem and not and attune myself to this magic item versus another magic item that I might want to have or someday find? Like, those are interesting decisions.
Bob, can you put a pin for the after show to talk about lav mics? Because we got a new one, and I want to talk about it later.
Ooh, okay.
All right.
Because I saw Senda mention something about recording with lav mics.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, let's talk about the next thing, which is scale gives an idea of what kind of things we'll be facing as our opposition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because at first level in a D&D game, you don't want to be fighting dragons, like ancient red dragons.
Right.
Unless you're Bob with his scale mail and his shield.
Or even then, you don't.
Well, at least Bob can run away then.
Run away!
Maybe.
But in Dungeon World, we don't care.
Right. I mean,
the first thing that that I often have people fight are giants.
Right, and it's actually because, like, you do that because that's a thing that actually is a little subversive about the game.
It is subversive, yeah.
Yeah.
I do it on purpose all the time because of that reason.
Right, and what it actually does, if we talk about introductions, recalling our previous episode, it actually sets new expectations for players who are like, oh, I'm playing fantasy, it must be like Dungeons and Dragons. Oh yeah, you're a first level character and that Cyclops is about to hit you. What do you do?
Yeah.
Right? And then it's like, oh, we defeated the Cyclops. Oh shit, we defeated the Cyclops. Right.
Now we've completely set a new set of expectations.
Exactly. Very smart.
And we've set up what this game is really all about with its scale.
Yep.
Like its narrative heroism.
Yeah, exactly. Because you beat it because you narrative your way through it.
Mm-hmm. Scale does a thing which we kind of actually just talked about, which is it informs us about the general mechanics of the game.
It can, absolutely.
Yeah, which we just talked about. Like with the Cyclops, for instance, like if somebody tries to hit it in the leg with a sword, I will say it does damage, but not a lot.
Yeah.
But if somebody shoots it in the eye,
big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
But in D&D, they have hit points. It's an attrition game.
Yeah.
So that informs of what the game is actually like. It's not necessarily about narrative. Like
it also has an armor class.
That too.
Which means that your chance to hit it is dependent on its scale, its mechanical scale in the game.
Yep.
Not your, not as much on.
It's dependent on your mechanical scale versus its mechanical scale, not on what you can do narratively as much.
Exactly.
Now there are narrative things you can do in D&D that will grant you advantage and things like that. But that is up to the game master's choice.
Which is neat.
Which is narrative positioning anyway. It's up to the game master's choice almost all the time.
Right, but which is neat because that game has so many mechanics. It's neat that it added in a piece for narrative positioning.
Yes.
That says like, hey, cool, if you narrative position your way, here's a modest, I don't want to say slight, here's a modest advantage.
It is a modest advantage.
Yeah.
It's not slight, it is actually modest.
Right, and it's not overwhelming.
Correct.
Right? Like it can screw you.
Because it's not gonna give you a bunch of more damage. It's just gonna give you more of a chance to hit.
More of a chance to hit, yeah. So it's a really nice, it's actually a nice piece to add narrative narrative positioning into the game.
By the way, I love these two. These are like we're talking about two of my favorite games in the world, so
Yeah.
I'm enjoying this
Yeah,
conversation.
we're just bouncing back and forth.
Next thing. So games that have a high crunch. I'm going to talk about both these things.
Yep.
These next 2 points. Here's where we're going to sort of make a generalization. This is an opinion of ours.
I mean,
we
so-
think it's pretty accurate.
Right, don't rush us with the edge cases on this.
Games that have high crunch and high scale are going to be mechanically complex.
Sure.
And in crunch, we're talking about a bunch of mechanics that work together.
Yep.
And games with low crunch or a low mechanical complexity and interaction between mechanisms and high scale will have fewer mechanics and will rely much more on narrative positioning.
I think again, look at high level high level D&D and high level Dungeon World for the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right, because 9th level Dungeon World doesn't actually feel radically different than 1st level Dungeon World.
Nope.
A little
Yeah.
different, not radically different.
That's a fair generalization.
Yeah, and requires and like you said, requires much more narrative positioning.
It's funny. It's about access to more narrative positioning in Dungeon World, whereas in D&D it's access to more potent resources.
Right.
That's the difference between those two games and their scale.
Yeah.
And based on the statement that we just made, the difference between those two games and that statement.
Which is why the Dungeon World dragon is the 12 hit point dragon.
Yeah, because
you-
you all fought a dragon, and it wasn't easy to kill it.
You can't hurt it until you can narratively
Hurt it. And
so
sometimes that's figuring out how to narratively hurt it.
So it's not an attrition thing. Like in D&D, a dragon will have a high armor class, meaning it requires a certain level of skill to hit it, and then it will have many, many hit points.
Yep.
So that it will last through many, many attacks. But in Dungeon World, it is conceivable that a 9th or 10th level character could kill the dragon in one shot. Like Corrin absolutely could generate 12 points of damage.
Yes.
But that can't happen until there's a point in the narration where the dragon is vulnerable.
Which means there's usually 3 or 4 defy dangers to get to the point where you can actually hurt the dragon.
Right, like can we do something to knock a scale off of it?
Yeah. Can we get near it?
Can we get near it? Can we knock a scale off it? Can we get up on its back to find to slide something under the scales?
Yeah. Now, I mean, so the other thing about, let's talk about D&D for a second and talk about mechanical complexity.
Sure.
Right. Dragons, especially ancient red dragons, they have a reaction that lets them automatically make saving throws 3 times a day. So that keeps them alive from those things like we're going to paralyze the dragon. Even if it fails its saving throw, we're going to one-shot kill the dragon with a spell. And not that there's as many of those in D&D, but like
In 5th edition.
in 5th edition.
Yes.
Correct.
4th edition, there was...
5th has still got some of those, like you die with one failed saving throw. But D&D's got more avenues designed into it to keep monsters, especially or ones that are considered legendary, alive.
Which is good.
Yeah, because they're supposed to feel that way.
Right. Because that was a thing lacking in 4th edition, and man, did we punk a few of those things.
It also gives them more actions between characters' actions. They actually have legendary actions where they can take actions between other characters' actions. They
That's
just, like,
also
interrupt and do a thing.
Yeah.
Interrupt and do a thing. They can't do multiple of them, but they can do it between each character. So it feels like they're always doing something.
So so from the GMing side, right, it makes the dragon a pretty complex thing to run.
It does. That's why usually you have them by themselves.
Right. Like, yeah.
Because they can be run by themselves because you don't need a bunch of other stuff because they can actually do stuff.
Yeah. Which is cool because
that was the problem with the 4th edition and the 3rd edition versions of those monsters is that they would get locked down a lot of time by higher level magic.
Yep.
It's much harder to do that in this version of the game. But it lends to the mechanical complexity and scale of the monster and its survivability and the things it can do to fend off and harm the players.
Yeah. Jason brings up a good point here. Requires magic items to hit monsters is a good example of
That is
scale.
true, because that means first level characters, when you run into something that requires a magic item to hit it, you just run away.
Yeah. And here's the thing, right? So here's the thing I learned from 3rd edition, right? I used to be very stingy about magic items, right? Because, and we'll talk about this in a second, I like lower scale games. So I used to be very stingy about magic items. And I went, this is years and years and years ago, I went to this talk by Wizards, and they were like, look, we basically assume, as we're creating monsters, creating adventures and things like that, we assume by this level, your character has these kinds of magic weapon bonuses.
Yeah.
And these kind of saving throw bonuses. And what it basically means is that, like, if you are ratcheting down the magic items, like, you're messing with the scale of the game.
Which is interesting because old versions of our most popular role-playing game in the world required that stuff. 5th edition actually doesn't assume that you'll have them.
Yeah. So it's good. Like,
But-
these are all lessons learned from past games.
Yes, but to counter that, because there are some monsters that require magic to hurt them, like 2/3 of the classes have access to magical spells. There's a
Yeah, and you're assumed, I mean, at some point you're going to at least encounter a magic, so like a +1 or something.
yeah, something cooler than that, hopefully. 'Cause
Yeah.
That's the intent of a lot of D&D.
Get one of those intelligence swords.
I mean, just something that's better than just a +1 sword, like a flaming brand of some
yeah.
house, like something like that. Like that's where they want to go with their stuff usually.
That was actually one of my favorite parts of Eberron. Was we used to have in 3rd edition we had an NPC artificer who would move enchantments for us.
Mhm.
Like, find some cool thing, be like, yeah, but I don't want it on that magic item.
I don't use an axe. I use a sword.
Yeah,
Right,
so
he'd be like,
it's
cool.
Let me
over
just
there.
boink.
Yeah, I'll just move that over
That's
for
pretty
you.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
We are using the two fantasy games that I know and love the most.
it's
so.
good. It's a really good comparison,
Yeah,
right?
I think both those games are great. So
I do. They both occupy very specific space.
Mhm.
Yep. All right. So cool. Why does any of this matter?
I don't know, why does it matter?
Right. Why
Tell me, Phil, why does it matter?
Why does any of this matter? Like, we just made a whole point about scale existing and what it does, but why does it matter? So it matters because it's important for you to understand the scale of the game you're playing. Because we all have preferences in what we like to run and what we like to play. Right?
Yes, we do.
Mhm.
Those who don't have those things don't have to be the same.
Right.
And, we might love playing in high scale games, but really not like running them.
That's me.
Yeah, that's totally.
I hate running high scale games.
actually really enjoy it as long as the mechanics aren't.
Well, of course you do.
Beyond difficult.
Yeah, of course you do. You love board games.
I do love board.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I get it.
That's why I have a fixation with Forged in the Dark games right now.
Yeah, because they're very fiddly.
They're fiddly.
Yeah, they're very fiddly. Yeah. It's the Euro. It's the Euro of role playing games.
It is a bit of the Euro of role playing games. Like there's a little bit of that going on.
There's a little bit of that going
because
on.
there's so many phases, right? Like I feel like I'm playing a Euro game. I'm playing.
Yeah,
in the dark.
like, okay, well, we're switching phases, right?
Yeah.
Like breakout. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, games last with groups.
Man.
Games last with groups because their expectations and preferences for games are met, right? We know when a game clicks with a group because we wanted it to do a thing and then it's doing it, right?
Mhm.
And if a game doesn't do a good job of explaining its scale to us, then we can likely go into a game thinking it's going to do one thing and then have a very different play experience.
Which is very disappointing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it can be. It can be like, sometimes it's a pleasant surprise. Like, oh, I didn't realize it was going to do this, and then we started playing and it was really cool, and you know what? It's great. And sometimes it's like, oh man, I wanted to do this thing, but like all this, like I want to do this thing, but all this game does is count rations.
Yeah. Here's the biggest problem with the Dresden Files role-playing game.
Okay.
It's got different settings for different scales, and it explains this stuff. But I feel like anybody who goes in there having known and read the Dresden Files books expects to sit down and play Harry Dresden.
Sure.
But that is one of the higher level scales of the game, which
Right.
is way more complex than a lot of the rest of the stuff.
Sure. Harry's
He's a wizard.
right,
You're
and
a
not
wizard.
even a lightweight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're a wizard, Harry.
But if you
Not
if you
Kentucky
play it
or
with not nearly as much refresh, at least in the older version,
Yeah.
or you play it without using certain playbooks in the newer version, which the newer version, the accelerated version, is actually a little bit better at handling this stuff.
Right.
Like it doesn't play the way that you think it should, especially if you play with not full wizards. Then it doesn't feel like you're playing doesn't necessarily feel like you're playing a Dresden Files game.
Yeah, I mean, like, for instance, if you didn't understand scale or something and you picked up Rich's street level heroes, right?
Oh,
And you were thinking you were playing like the Avengers.
yeah, that's not the Avengers.
Right, you'd be
You're
like,
playing
wait,
the Defenders.
you're playing the Defenders. And there's a perfectly great place and mindset in which to play the Defenders, and then sometimes you want to be the Avengers.
You're not saving the world; you're saving the city.
Yeah. So yeah, so this has a lot to do with with expectation management. All right, cool. But that's cool if a game has a fixed.
But what if we have a dynamic scale?
Yeah, what happens if it changes?
I mean, we might like it at some scales better than others.
Uh-huh.
Like, I used to love playing 3rd edition D&D between like levels 4 and 7.
Yes, that's like actually my favorite. That's for me. That's the sweet spot of the game.
Yeah, I mean, 3 was fun because you felt like you're going to die all the time, but not necessarily die.
3 was like you're probably not going to die, but it's still scary enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like 9th and 10th level, you felt pretty powerful.
Yeah, and then like 10th level, I remember again going to a seminar from WotC back at Gen Con where they were like, look at 10th level, your character. This is 3rd edition. At 10th level, your character is more likely to die of a saving throw than to run out of hit points.
Yes, exactly.
And that changes, like, that's a very different scale of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it changes it from, oh, is this monster going to hit me and kill me, to, oh, finger of death. Oh, you're dead. And then it doesn't actually really matter because we'll resurrect you.
Yeah, because
now it's a resource problem.
Correct. And that was what you spent gold on.
Yes.
That and making magic items.
And making scrolls.
And making scrolls.
To resurrect everyone.
And potions.
Yep.
Buying potions.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, so it is entirely possible it's entirely possible in a game that has a dynamic scale to like a certain part of the game and not other parts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's definitely me.
There's a reason why we made a book called The Streets of Avalon. It doesn't really assume that you're going to be more than 10th level at the end of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's only supposed to play up to tier 2 on purpose.
Right. So yeah, so understanding the scale of game has a lot to do, has a large impact on what games we'll play and which ones we're going to enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. So hopefully that was a decent explanation of what we meant by scale. We're going to take a break, check in with the awesome chat room, who's been very chatty, and then come back and get into more discussions about this topic. But first, Chris wants to tell us about another show on the Misdirected Mark Network.
So I know this really wonderful actual play podcast. It was Emmy nominated.
Amen.
Amen. It highlights women as game
Amen.
masters.
Amen.
Yeah. It's every other Tuesday.
Amen.
Yeah.
Actually, it's even been more than every other Tuesday the last couple of weeks.
That's true. It's
Yeah.
been out.
It's been putting out a lot of episodes lately.
It's called She's a Super Geek.
I want a tambourine. Right?
Are you a rock and roll play baby?
I believe.
Yeah.
Testify.
What's the next part of that line? I always forget. Is a rock and roll play baby?
Oh,
Nobody? Really?
The chat room.
They'll give it to me in a second.
Yeah.
Campaign.
And
thanks, Avi.
something.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for Send It Emily to become crashing over the top of this chat room.
Anyways, it's an awesome podcast. You should listen to it.
It is an awesome podcast. Cool. What
rolls a natural 20 in
crazy?
In crazy?
Something along those lines.
Something. Hey, what's chat room up to?
Yeah, what are they up to?
They've been chugging along with us.
Yeah, they look like they were keeping pace with us.
Yeah. They've been keeping pace with us. It's been, it's been a good chug.
Andrew's talking about how to transfer her game from a Pathfinder game to a 5e game, but there's a bunch of classes like the Witch and the Gunslinger and the stuff like that are hard to convert over.
Yep.
Which is hard to convert over. Like, those are not easy classes to convert over.
Yep. Bunch of love for life paths in there.
I think life paths are actually cool. That is a garage episode. Did we do a garage episode on life paths?
Did we say Emily?
Did we say
Andy? Did I say
Andy?
Emily? Whoops, I meant Andy.
Did you?
I don't think I did.
Okay, but in case we did, it's
absolutely.
well.
bad.
Let's just say
Profound apologies.
Yeah, profound apologies.
Anyways,
Anyway,
You just made the list, pal.
my name? Oh man,
I mean,
I'm sorry, Andy. I'm gonna go hook up power to your house in Minecraft.
That's glitter bomb.
Yep.
Right there. Just don't send it here, please.
Have the kids open up all your packages.
Okay. Let's see. We should get back to it.
Yes. Let's get back to it.
Yeah, I'm really racking my brain on whether we did a life path
Guess
episode
what?
or not. But since I can't remember,
we'll do another
We'll
one.
do a life
do
path
it
episode.
again.
Why not?
Ding.
Oh, I swear we did a life path episode. Somebody
I don't
search
know
the
if we did.
somebody search the Googles.
I don't remember
I'll do
talking
it.
about life paths.
I'm gonna go look.
Not now.
Okay, not now. Okay,
Put a
cool.
pin in it. We can look it up after
All
the
right,
after show.
yeah.
So let's pick up where we left off. With questions, of course.
Yeah, questions indeed.
Bill?
Yeah.
I have a very important question for you. Do you have a preference for scale?
I think I do. I think that I, in general, would say that I like games with smaller scales. I don't know particularly why, but like for instance, I like my D&D up to 10th level, and then normally I want to chuck it. I like for instance, Tales from the Loop is a small scale game. Like they do pretty fantastic things, but they're still just kids, right? Like I don't know, the scale of that game works for me. I really am digging right now Forbidden Lands. Like that is a small scale game, and for whatever reason, that game is totally doing it for me. Like I love that game. So I do think I have a preference for smaller scale games over like earth-shattering Avengers games. Now, that said, for earth-shattering Avengers style games, I'm okay with that as a one-shot. Like I don't want to have to, I guess for me that, all right, so that's it. That's where it's coming together. It's the plausibility part. Like how realistic week after week. It's the thing that gets me about the Avengers comic, because I always start reading the Avengers and then like month after month I'm like, how many fucking problems can these guys have? Like how many times can the world be in this much danger?
As many times as it'll sell books.
Well, exactly, right? So then like it breaks down for me, whereas something like a Spider-Man like level, like it's realistic, like he's gonna run into problems every week.
It's one of the reasons why that if we're gonna talk about campaign pacing and whatnot, who wrote the Avengers for the longest time? Who wrote the Fantastic Four?
Oh, wait, who wrote the Fantastic Four?
Who wrote the Fantastic Four?
Hickman.
Hickman. When Hickman gets writing a book, it's like 100 issues that make sense.
Yeah, and then then he's out.
Yeah, and then he's done because he told the story.
Exactly. Yeah, so I think my preference is for mid to low for campaigns, and then I think more flexible when it gets to one shots. Like at one shots, you can do like whatever. Like I'll crack a sun in half in a one shot.
Bob?
Yeah, I don't really have a preference for scale. It kind of depends for me on who's at the table. Some people, some groups, when you gather them together, have a better fit for certain scales. So it kind of depends for me. But I like playing at all the different scales. I've had some low scale stuff that's been amazing, and I've had some epic scale stuff that was amazing, and so I like them all.
That's not an answer. No.
I can like them all.
It's fine.
He doesn't have a preference. Does he have a preference? No. The answer is no.
No, it's fine.
And I quantified it a little bit. So
Yeah.
You quantified it.
What about you?
Me? I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think you like mid to high.
Yeah.
Yep.
You like mid to high because you love pulp,
Uh-huh.
right? So at the most realistic, pulp is a mid-level kind of thing, and then from there, just send it upward.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, let me start at level 4 in D&D.
Right.
I mean, Dungeon World doesn't matter.
Correct. Dungeon World, I mean, sometimes in Dungeon World or in PBTA games in general, especially for one-shots, I'll let you go pick an extra move right off the bat. Like, cool, make up your character, take an extra move.
Look at 1. Like, you're pretty competent when you start playing 1. Like, your characters are fairly competent. And then they can get broader and more impressive. Like,
I have, by the way, just as an aside, I started looking through the stats for 1.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm going to condense it down. It's a little, Matt did it, and it's like a little dense to read. I think I can make a cool infographic to kind of show.
That would be good. And I can see how wrong I am about my game.
I'd be surprised. Numbers actually bear out way better than you think.
I thought they would.
Yeah.
I was hoping they would.
Yeah, numbers aren't bad.
It felt right. That's all I have to say about that. It felt right.
All right, so cool. So scale is actually like which is good, right? Like we managed. Like I'm on the lower end, you're on the upper end, and Bob's like, it's cool, I'll play whatever.
I'm in the middle to upper end, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm on low to middle.
Because I like anime too.
Right. So for you and I, right?
I like shonen anime.
Right. So for you and I, the sweet spot in a game is middle.
Yes.
Like if we're gonna play a game together, middle is the tier we both like.
You'll play with me anything.
Yes.
Because when I get to the higher parts, like it usually makes sense.
I've always enjoyed it. I mean,
generally only if it's fantasy.
Right, but if you pitch me a game, like if you're like, dude, we're gonna play Exalted, I might be like,
But I wouldn't play.
Well, I mean, I didn't think you'd pitch me Exalted, but you know what I mean. But that's a game like
anything with a D10 system, I'm probably not going to pitch.
Right, but
see, I feel bad, like, because Monica designs all that
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
Sorry, Monica, my bad.
yeah, but that for me, that's a game that starts with a scale really high.
Yeah,
Right, like that. The scale on that game is like there isn't much. There's high, and then it goes to like ludicrous high.
yeah, but those games aren't about like the fighting is not even. I'm pretty sure the fighting isn't really the point of that game.
Right.
The point of that game is the drama that happens in between the
Yeah,
fights.
which for me, that's why I like Amber.
Sure.
Right, Amber's a game where the what you call it? That game is mechanically simple, right? But scale is ridiculously high.
I would love to play. I would love to run that game. I would hate to play that game.
I would love to run that game again. Now knowing everything that I know about narrative positioning and story gaming that I didn't know in 1993 when I ran my first game.
Yeah.
Like if I could take everything I knew about story games now and go back and play that game, my Amber games would be amazing. And they weren't bad then, but man, based on what I know now, I could do such a bang-up job on that game. Oh man.
Let's move on to question 2.
It's making me think about it. Question 2, in session 0, how do you set scale if it's not mechanically set or if it's not clear in the game?
I pitch a situation.
Yeah, I think that's a fair. Like this is the kind of things we think we're going to be doing in this game.
Yeah. Like here's the situation. This is what you're doing.
Right.
Here's the kind of characters that I expect you to fit your concepts inside of.
Right. I will very much try to like.
What's the framework for play?
I will try to grab stuff that comes up in the examples. Or the other thing I will do is I will look at like what does this game value based on page count, right? So like when we started Forbidden Lands, when I was starting to read it, I was like, what the hell is this game actually about?
I mean, we can figure it out. Like that's almost always what you can do is you can go figure out what the scale is based on the mechanics.
Right. But I do like to have that scale discussion before people start making characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like we said earlier, scale informs us to some level of the kind of character we're going to create.
Here's a perfect prime example of that. I'm like, all right, we're going to play D&D. This is when I was running 3rd edition. And I'm like, we're all starting at level 1. Somebody handed me a 5-page backstory about their character fighting in like in this like long drawn out war. I'm like,
okay, but you're level 1.
Yeah, but you're level 1. How does this make any sense?
Right.
Like,
and then I defeated the Orc Lord
that stuff
on the field of battle.
That kind of stuff happened in the backstory. I'm like, this is not in.
Right. These are not congruent
with what I said in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's kind of. You know what I think is interesting in terms of scale is DCC. Right. The funnel is a very interesting. The funnel's a very interesting concept.
It's something.
No, I'll say what's interesting about it is like the scale is very clear, right? Like you do not have classes.
Hey, you're a shoemaker and you're a farmer.
Right.
And you're the mayor.
Right. And you don't have classes, and certain mechanics that are afforded to characters from level 1 up are not afforded to funnel characters.
It's awful.
Well, but here's the thing.
For me, it's awful.
But here's the thing.
That's an opinion.
It's a one shot. You're not supposed to play a campaign out of it, right? You run through the funnel, and then whoever makes it out the other side, you have some attachment to, and then you make a class out of them, and then they become a character.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing about DCC. It's actually hard to kill a DCC character. There's a couple roles you have to fail in a roll to die, like to be out of that game. You can drop even at first level and still come back and live. There's a rule that's like after the fight's over.
Let's see if you're still alive.
Yeah, you see, like sometimes you just looked like you were dead.
Yep.
I was mostly dead.
Really sort of hurt.
Sort of right.
You got clonked on the head.
Yeah.
It's fine.
We're all fine. But see, knowing your preference for scale, right? I get why the funnel is torturous for you.
Yeah. It's
but
awful.
for me, like to me, it was like super interesting to play it because when I ran it, those guys like went in with like this big pile of characters, and some of them didn't matter; they just died off, and some of them like we started rooting for them.
Uh-huh.
Like Bob's, was it your beggar?
Yeah, I had a beggar that was just like, he was kind of a coward, and he never wanted to get into things. And then we'd run into a situation where we're like, I guess I better grab that sword and run into the fray.
And then he'd roll like a 17 and like kill something. And so like after a while, like we're like, oh man, this guy's great. Like,
Then he died.
Yeah, there was Jerry's Elven Lawyer. I was rooting for that guy, but he got it. He got it at the end of the funnel. It wasn't good. Yeah, it's interesting. And again, it is definitely not for it's definitely not for everyone, and it is definitely a scale thing, right?
Yep.
So it is definitely the scale of the game. Here's the thing about the funnel. Mechanically, the game is very simple, but the stakes are actually slightly higher than where the characters are mechanically, which is why you're given 4 characters and a pile more.
Not the scale is slightly higher than where the characters are competent.
Exactly.
Like
So
the scale of the things that you're dealing with is larger than you.
right. So the thing is,
Which is cool, because if you succeed, then you feel awesome.
Yeah.
and so this is the part where I tip my hat to Goodman, is that was an intentional design.
Yeah.
Right? So while it's not for everyone, it wasn't just this random half-ass idea. Like, there's an intentional thing for creating emotional bonds to your to the character. It's I would say that even if you don't play it, reading that rulebook, despite its ginormous size, there is a lot of really smart things that Goodman does to the 3x D20 that actually makes it my favorite version of D20.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard you say it before, and I've read enough of it that I get it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of unmechanizing and narrativizing some of the pieces in there, especially like the fighters' feats and things like that. Also, the spells are so...
The spells are ridiculous,
Yeah.
but they're ridiculous in like a really fun way. Yeah. Anyway, so I think we're both on point with this, right? Like you need to, as a GM, when
back to the
getting
point.
right, you need to, as a GM, when you are setting up your session 0, you need to make sure that everybody understands the scale of the game.
And you can establish that in a number of ways. You can give examples using popular media. You can just straight out say this is the kind of scale that we're playing at if you want to.
You can cite like this, the event, like, so here's some of the adventures that are like out for this game, and this is what the situations are, right? Those kinds of things.
If it's going to be a game about being competent spies, like, you expect a certain thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that is what I am setting up when I say that.
Exactly.
Like, you're going to do X, Y, and Z.
Yep. Yeah, and so it's really good to get that session 0. So, if you're talking about getting ready to make characters, scale, tone, right? Like, these are the things you want to make sure that everybody understands before they start whipping up their characters. Otherwise, you're going to get these like weird mismatches. And we had a friend that we used to game with, and he was notorious for this, where he would get in his head what he wanted his character to do before he saw any of the rules. And then, like, we'd go to make characters, and then he'd just be annoyed because
he couldn't do the thing that he
Couldn't do it, yeah.
couldn't do the thing that he wanted to do.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times we warned him, like, don't overthink this, and then he'd overthink it, right? Like, it would happen every time.
No, that was the fun that they got out of the game.
Fun.
I mean,
I do not think that word means what you think it means.
I said fun that they get out of
Yes.
the game.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't fun.
Uh,
Because they couldn't do what they wanted
not so
to do.
much. Not so much.
So, I have another question for you, Phil.
Sure.
What are good game mastering techniques for when you want to change scale mid-game / campaign?
I like the changing of arcs. So I like that an arc has completed, and that arc has somehow signified the time to move to the next tier.
If I'm changing mid-campaign, like, arc is a great way to say it. A good way to change arcs is you change the setting.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah. Like,
setting
we
where
were
the
on
characters
Earth. Now you are in space.
Yes. You were in this town, now you are going over to the capital.
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
a much bigger city.
Yep.
Which, once those are actually 2 scale things.
Yes.
Like,
Absolutely.
you change the scale of the setting.
Right. You had no magic item.
Now you have
Now
a
you
magic
have
item.
this magic item. Right.
You introduce, that's the idea there is you were introducing something into the game that is of a larger scale than you previously had before.
Yeah.
That could be an item, that could be an enemy with powers that you haven't seen before.
That could be an ally.
Could be an ally with powers you haven't seen before.
Right.
That could be something like, oh, look, we have this mode of transportation that we didn't have before, which gives us access to more of the world. You actually can see this in JRPGs all the time. If anybody is familiar with JRPGs, Japanese role-playing games, there is a point usually where you stop being bound to the linear path that you were walking, and you get some sort of mode of transportation that lets you go anywhere in the world.
Right. So at the first tier of the game, right, the first scale of the game, we need you to, like, we put you on this path, and then at some point you have achieved the thing that now allows you to go and
Yeah.
branch.
Which gives you it changes the scale of the game.
Yeah, right. Like we see this, we see this in Star Wars, right? So in the original 3 movies, right, Luke changes tier.
Yeah.
In the between all 3 movies.
Yeah. He goes from being just a farm boy to being a hero of the rebellion to being a Jedi Knight.
Yeah.
Well, a wannabe Jedi Knight.
Jedi Master.
I mean, as much as there,
I'm talking about the original 3 movies.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Right, but as much as there was one at the time, he was it. Legit. But yeah, we definitely see that. We definitely see that transformation, and it, there are a few arcs that note it, right? So the destruction of the Death Star completes like his first story arc. What you call it? His defeat at the hands of Vader, right? Because in that one he gets Yoda, right?
Yep.
So he gains an ally.
Yep.
And that ally unlocks powers.
Yes. So now he has a bunch of space magic.
Yes, he has space magic. And he goes and fights other space wizard who's way more powerful.
Which is not how the Star Wars role-playing game technically worked. I mean, the WEG one did, but in some ways.
Good point.
But that's not how the Saga edition or the newest edition, the Genesis version of it.
The problem is is that Star Wars works perfectly fine if you ignore Jedis. Right? So like if you're just playing smugglers and bounty hunters cruising around and doing shit, even the WEG one actually works. Even the D20 one works pretty well.
I thought Saga worked just fine if you were having Jedi with smugglers and soldiers and stuff. Like the smugglers and the soldiers had powers that were comparable.
Yeah, but no, it's not that. It's that some of the Jedi powers are annoying in the D20 thing. Like when you look at Phantom Menace, like Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi deflects every fucking blaster bolt shot at him.
Yeah, well, we don't have to talk about how good or bad those movies were, man.
No, I'm just saying, Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi deflects every blaster shot. First level Saga
not that good.
Is taking some blaster bolts.
No, let's talk about. Okay, let's do a breakdown real quick of Phantom Menace and where Obi-Wan was in the grand scheme of things.
Okay, third level Saga still taking some blaster bolts.
I think level 6 is when you become a Jedi Knight in that game.
Is it?
So I'm pretty sure Obi-Wan was actually level 7.
Okay,
level
that's
6,
fair.
level 7.
That's fair.
Which were deflecting a lot more blaster bolts from really terrible droids who have like +2 to hit.
Yeah. And truthfully, Saga should have just started at level 5.
I mean,
should just lop the bottom of the scale off and just been like, hey, guess what? You want to play something that feels like Star Wars? You at least start playing here.
Yeah, it could have just said that. Like, start here if you want to play this stuff.
Yeah, if you want it to feel like Star Wars, start here. Because the tier you're looking for is at least mid. Yeah.
There was a comment from Ange. You can totally mix scale characters with the players with the highest scale characters. You need to understand how to not scale.
Yes.
Yeah, that's important then.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a different kind of game.
And that's on the player, right? Like, if you've got a player who's like, this is Gandalf and like the rest of the...
Sure.
Like, Gandalf knows when to split.
Well, think about this. That's Phantom Menace with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and then Padme and Anakin.
Right.
Like if they're an adventuring party, they're all different.
They're all over. They're all over the place.
But if you look at the design of that story or the adventure design there, like who's going to stop Darth Maul?
Right. Well, first things first,
who's going to stop the
GM for Phantom Menace? Right. Immediately splits the party.
Yes.
Right.
You're running 3 separate games essentially.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
So so then you have Anakin piloting
3 separate scenes.
You have Anakin fighting off the whole droid empire.
Yeah. And only 2 of them are actually interactive in any way, shape, or form.
Correct. And
Jar Jar too. Don't forget Jar Jar.
We get all the way down to the fight with Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, and the director literally just separates them, just takes Obi-Wan away
because their scale is so much different.
Yes.
And by the way, I'm talking about the wuxia scale here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The young I forgot what it's called. The Jing.
No, now that you've said it, the
Zhang Yu.
Yeah, the Zhang Yu. Thank you. I was gonna say now that you've said it wrong, you've totally obliterated it in my mind.
The Zhang Yu scale is way different for those characters.
Yeah. And so the game, I mean, you even see it in the movie, right? The door opens, right? Darth Maul's standing there. He lights the lightsaber, indicating 1, most of you are not in my game. Then lights the second side of the lightsaber, which is like only 2 of you are even remotely qualified for this fight. And then what does Qui-Gon say? We'll take this.
Yeah.
Right? He sends everyone else off. He's like, we'll go handle this.
Yeah, and basically they just run in initiative order, but through each character.
Right.
Like, that's kind of how that rolls.
Yeah. So yes, that's the.
Now we just like Star Warsified the second worst movie in the Star Wars saga.
I mean,
Or Star Wars saga.
turned it into a GM, we're turning into an important GMing lesson, right?
Yes.
The important GMing lesson, and this goes to Angie's thing, is that when you have a party of mixed scale, you need to give the lower scale characters something to do, and you need to occupy the higher scale characters so that the higher scale character doesn't be like, oh, you're trying to pick that lock? Knock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
By the way, and no, what the lower scale character gets to do is the thing that they're best at.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the higher scale character gets all Gandalf-y.
And then the mid-level scale characters are often dealing with something that's very personal to them.
Yes.
Jar Jar fighting, not that Jar Jar is a
Ooh.
mid-level scale character, but
Lord.
No,
fighting
please.
with his people,
Hate that
and
thing.
Padme is going after the Trade Federation people,
Yeah.
which is very much in
Right, that's completing her arc, and
Yeah.
who knows why Jar Jar's there, etc. Yeah. And Anakin's doing something, right? It's totally wizard. Whatever he's doing, it's totally wizard.
Wow, I'm sorry. Or
Whoa! What nonsense? What nonsense is going on?
so Schmitty has decided that movie's amazing.
Oh no, I know why. Schmitty was like, Schmitty, how old were you when you saw
It
Phantom
was
Menace?
probably the first Star Wars he ever saw.
How old were you?
Saw.
Because this is the what is it? I forget what it is from How I Met Your Mother. Barney can tell how old you are, but whether you like whether you like Ewoks or not. There's a thing about that, like based on how old you were when you saw
do you like
Jedi.
Ewoks?
Yeah,
I love the Ewoks.
yeah. See, Schmitty was 9, and Phantom Menace was made for 9-year-olds, and I know this because my kids who saw Phantom Menace, like my youngest, she loved that movie. Almost fell off the couch laughing when Jar Jar stuck his head between the two things and got shocked and had like the numb tongue and all that.
Jar Jar does not nearly annoy me as much as it annoys everybody else.
I'm annoyed by Jar Jar in episode 1. I
know a lot of people are. It's a non.
By episode 2 and 3, it becomes less of a problem. But in episode 1, like I'm so annoyed by the comedy that comedy that's jammed in there.
Pin this for the after show.
I don't even want to do
We're going
that.
to talk about it in the after show. I
right.
want to talk about it in the after show.
All right. Anyway,
Now that you've got me rolling on it, I want to talk about it.
okay.
So, question 4.
Yeah. Question 4 is designers. How can we leverage the idea of scale for our games?
Oh, I mean, so if you're going to design something that's got a bunch more mechanics into it, you can actually design your scale bumps into your mechanics, especially if the characters are going to constantly level up and whatnot. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that when we are talking about adventures and things like that, we can actually instruct people when they're designing these adventures for their home groups and whatnot, what the scale should be at for different spaces within there and how to like move it based on genre conventions and how the mechanics interact with those genre conventions.
Yeah.
It's a really hard question to actually answer because we don't have a game as an example that we can utilize that we've designed, unless there is one.
We haven't yet.
Yeah, like I don't think there is exactly one.
So I will say this, right? My answer for this was the word deliberately.
I mean, yeah, sure,
Like
deliberately.
we should be deliberate about this, about using scale in our games, right? So we should be completely clear to the GM who's reading the game. This is or even to the players. This is the scale of this game.
Well, here, let's do this. The Digital Elysium game. It's about small towns.
Yeah. Like here's what you're not going to do in this game.
Yeah, you are
Right.
not. You are going to help a small town and engage in drama between
Characters and NPCs.
and
Absolutely.
NPCs.
Yeah, the scale of this game is that like
That's
you go
that's the scale.
Right.
We set the situation. We set the stakes. Either you're going to save the town from its problems or not,
exactly.
and that's the game that you're playing. And you're also going to figure out how your relationship with your fellow band members evolves.
Right. Like for instance, in Hydra Hackers, you were not going to defeat the Water Authority.
Yes, that's correct.
That is not a thing that like there's nothing in the game. And when we write the full game, there will not be anything in the game that is like you can tear down the Water Authority.
Really, the best thing you can do is make your neighborhood an enjoyable place to live in.
Exactly.
That's actually the goal of the game,
Yes.
right? Am I right
Yeah.
about that?
No, you
I've
are.
always
You
thought
are
that was-
100% right. And people had asked me like, have you ever thought of doing a book about like full scale rebellion? And I was like, not really. Like, not that that couldn't happen, but the scale is way out of what I think that game produces. Right? I think that game is very much about like it's like between middle and low. Right? Like your problems are very neighborhood based. You're somewhat heroic, but actually really not that heroic.
I mean, what does the rebellion get you anyway? The reason the Water Authority is in power and exists is because there's actually a water shortage. They actually do a job of measuring out water. Like,
Yes.
There's actually not enough for everybody in the world.
Right. And they're just also terrible.
They're terrible human
Right.
beings.
Exactly. Right. It's
They could make it better for everybody, but not a lot better.
right. Not a lot better. Right. Exactly.
Like, at least that's the feel I get from reading the book. And
The one hint I put in the one hint I put into the setting is that not all countries have water authorities, and that other countries have found other ways to deal with this. So it leaves it open that there are some countries in the world that still have to ration out their water, but have found other, like, either more equitable
more
ways,
humane ways
more
to do
humane. Right. What the Water Authority is in Hydra Hackers is it's my take, again, because everything about Hydra Hackers was originally rooted in cyberpunk, so it's my take on capitalism out of control.
Yeah.
Right? So what does capitalism out of control look like when water is the main object?
My favorite thing about it is, like, it's actually a terrible situation. Like, yes, capitalism is out of control, but not to the point where, like, if they felt like it, they could actually make it a lot better.
Right.
They could make it a little better.
They can make it a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would be decent. Like, people wouldn't necessarily die of stupid stuff like they do in that setting, in that world.
Right.
But it's not going to be like everybody's going to have tons and tons of water to drink at that point.
Exactly. So it's the idea of, again, so scale I think is really important, and I think it's really important. Like, that's an important question that's an important thing to address in the intro of the game, is like, are you ever going to, like, defeat the Water Authority? No. And in fact, everything about the Water Authority, when they tell you, like, when I describe it in the book, is like, the Water Authority has way more guns. Your printed guns they can dissolve, right? Like, everything about them is like, they're staying in power. Like, you're absolutely right. What your goal of this game is to eke out a livable community underneath this oppressive regime in what is essentially a post-apocalyptic world where society didn't completely collapse.
You know what I've been seeing a trend towards in games? Not that a lot of them are doing it all the time, but it's a trend in games, and I think a lot of the Forge in the Dark stuff is doing it, is that there's an end goal for games.
Yeah, I actually think that's really interesting. I
don't think Hydra Hackers has one.
No. Hydra Hackers...
Yeah.
Hydra Hackers
is fine. They can just tell stories.
Well, it has a character end goal, but not necessarily a game end goal. Because one of the last things that you can pick on the advances is that you become
Neighborhood icon.
You become a neighborhood icon.
Yeah, so
you can retire in the game.
The thing that I would love to see in a book, which I will be asking for when we actually write out the fuller book, is what does a campaign look like in this game?
Please pin a topic that we are definitely going to talk about, which is, for now, let's just call it end games.
End games.
Because that is actually a really good point, is...
Ding.
Like, there is this misnomer that is perpetuated throughout the history of role-playing games.
Scale is so important.
That games should be, like, a role-playing game should be played forever.
Yeah, which is false.
Right? Like, I've been playing first edition for 30-something years, same characters, we're like
campaign.
6 generations into the same, into these characters, whatever, these, like, lineage of characters. Listen, the truth of the matter is, most of us play a game for 1 to 2 arcs. And then we put the game away. And so you're right, games like Scum and Villainy, where there are now built-in end game conditions, I think is actually a really neat trend. And
there's a bunch in the chat room now. Avi mentioned Band of Blades has a very clear end game. You can actually lose on the way to the end game too, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a thing that can happen. The Watch, because you play until I forget. Darn, I know what that game's about, but I forget what the end game is. I remember reading it once. I've never
never
with
played.
Masters. Isn't that a 1-shot or a 2-shot?
I don't know. Misspent Youth.
Yeah, Misspent Youth has an end.
Night Witches can have it if you're playing the full campaign, like if you're playing the World War II campaign arc. If you're playing station to station, the game ends.
That's cool.
Yeah, like you get to the end of World War II, which is a really strange thing, right? Like for,
I think
Dread's more of a one-shot.
I need games that are more than one.
Lady Blackbird is a one-shot.
No, it's not. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. People play Lady Blackbird for multiple.
But it's one story.
Yes, it's one arc.
It
is an arc, but you can play it for multiple
okay,
sessions.
fair enough.
That one actually fits into my. I actually like that one as a good example for like if you don't play this as a one shot, you can play like 5 episodes, like a BBC series,
And then
actually
be done.
Be done.
Yep.
It actually plays a story.
Yep.
And those characters evolve. Like they have an evolution, but it has an end game and it has an end goal.
So, because now we're going to have this topic one day, and I'm just going to say this. Lady Blackbird has an end goal that is story-based,
Yeah.
not mechanical.
Well, I mean, a lot of games don't have.
No, I know. I'm saying, like, one of the things that's really interesting about Scum and Villainy is that Scum and Villainy has a
It
mechanical
does have
ending.
a sort of a mechanical end goal.
Right, and I think I'm guessing that Band of Blades has something
Probably
mechanical.
too, yeah.
Right. So that's actually a really good point. Is that there are narrative end points and there are mechanical endpoints. And I think we've seen many games that have narrative endpoints because we say, hey, this game tells a story. When this story is done, you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Like Fall
not
of Magic.
right, but not right. With Fall of Magic, eventually we get to the end of the map.
Yeah.
Right?
And the story ends.
Right. But this idea of like for Scum and Villainy, the idea that once you have once you're standing with one of the factions reaches a particular level, you're given one last job.
With what? Scum and Villainy?
Yeah.
No, there's a series of jobs.
Okay, but it's a series. But when those series of jobs complete,
Then it's over.
You've hit the big score.
That actually, it drives you to the end of the play.
Right.
All right. We've kind of segued out of.
Yeah, but I totally want to
Yeah.
do this topic because
Absolutely.
I think it's fascinating, and I think it's a design space that we as designers
To bring it back in.
can actually build into.
To bring it back in, the idea of scale for there is like your end game should match your scale.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
If your scale is cosmic, your end game, and again, this is what drives me bonkers about the Avengers, is that the end, like when a story ends, it's like, wow, we saved the multiverse, and then it's like next week,
Let's go save
the multiverse is in danger, and it's like, really again?
Because the best ones that do that, they start back over and
Yeah.
build it up.
Yeah.
Instead of just starting from
Yeah.
wherever. Which is what we'll hope to see with the next phase of Marvel.
Right.
Because they just did a whole giant story arc that ended with a very cosmic scale thing.
And then they kind of, with Far From Home, they kind of like started back, like retreating back from that.
Sort of.
But I mean,
Well,
like
they're
Peter goes
breaking
to
it into 2 different scales.
Yeah.
yes,
They're going to have the smaller scale
right.
and the bigger scale.
Yep. Which I think is awesome. Which they did with the TV shows, right? The Netflix ones were all small scale.
Yeah.
In the backdrop of the much bigger scale. Cool. You want to wrap
Well,
this?
that's our first take on scale. Or probably our only take on scale. Maybe a different take on scale will come at some point.
I don't know, but
we might do a mechanical scale episode.
right. But I really liked. I mean, I thought this topic actually came out.
Well, because it created 3 more topics.
Yeah,
So-
well,
Yeah, that's true.
I always like that.
Well, we hope that made sense. It made sense to me.
It made sense to me.
Yeah. I
The
mean,
chat room was very chatty about it,
Yeah,
so
they
I
were.
feel like
Very.
we were dialed into
And
it.
we spawned a couple of other discussions in the chat room too, so they were enjoying themselves.
do they have anything else to say?
Nothing that we need to jump on at the moment. We should
then
move
this.
into the thing.
So, Bob, you got to be quiet for a very long time. Tell us stuff.
Yeah, so
It's the conversation corner.
it's the conversation corner.
Thank you, Bob.
Chatty chat. So
Chatty chat.
I have been catching up. That's been my thing. I had a very, very productive holiday weekend. I actually started to make progress on things that I hadn't been making progress on. I finished Punisher Season 2. So that's wrapped up. I started and finished Misdirected Mark, word scramble.
That's 2. And Phil's doing the
Stranger
finger thing.
Things Season 3.
Wow, you got that out.
Stranger Things Season 3. I don't know.
Stop spitting on Phil. That's gross.
Yes, apparently.
Do you need a napkin?
Blah, blah, blah.
No, it's okay, but I definitely did not consent to being spit on.
All right, sorry about that. Yeah, so I watched a couple of things, finished binging. I finished that book, as I mentioned in the opening, in the one thing.
That's awesome.
So now I have to figure out what the next book is going to be and get ready to start diving into that. And I came up with 2 new game ideas that I started making notes on. Now I have to cycle my brain around to go back to some of the existing game ideas and get some work done so I can get ready for Metatopia, because that's going to be a thing.
That's a thing.
That is a thing. Phil, what about you?
You know what? I went to my parents' house for a quick weekend. So I picked my son up, who was down at my parents' house for the weekend. So I don't get anything done. when I go to my parents' house. So I was in the car. I drove for 12 hours, right? 6 down, 6 back. I was solo parent. I gave Florence the weekend of no parenting. I think we were figuring it out. She has never been in that house without the kids in it since the kids were born.
Wow.
She has been out of the house, without the kids, but she's never been in the house without the kids. I have tons of times, but so that was a bit of my. I offered to do it because like I went away for Origins and all of that, so I was like, I will, I can take the kids away for a weekend. So anyway, I did that, but like. It was fun hanging out with my parents and stuff, but like I can't get anything done, right? And nor did I try, right? Like I knew when I set up my week, I was like, oh, I'm traveling and I'm going to my parents' house, so I set the bar at nothing. But the one thing I didn't get to do was I was supposed to run my game on Sunday, my Continental game, but I got back into town. I think like I don't know, 4:45. And I was like, ugh, I'm like not like
done.
The kids were great in the car ride. Like they were exceptionally good, but it was still 6 hours of driving and my brain was just a bit fried. So I went to dinner with Bob and Glenn, socialized for a bit, and then I went home and played Minecraft. And I did, like I said at the beginning, I played a ton of Minecraft, which is my treat to myself.
Yep.
So I did have a lot of fun. And I played, I did play, like I got up in the morning and I just knocked off the show notes. And then I was like, cool, now I'm going to go play Minecraft for the rest of the damn day. Yeah, that's it. That's all I did. How about you?
So to me, summer's over because, it's September. And it's cooler outside, so I enjoy that. So we had our summer cookout,
Nice.
Our end of summer cookout at the house. We played a lot of cornhole and, drank and ate food and things like that.
There you go. That's fun.
Here. It was a good time. What else did I do? So I've been studying up on Illustrator and a project management course.
I'd like to cite niche infringement. Both of those things are two of my skill sets.
No, what I am doing is giving us a backup.
Okay, I'm just citing that both Illustrator and project management are kind of my shticks.
If Tony was here, he'd say niche infringement's is bullshit. It doesn't actually exist. It's not real.
Just gonna say niche infringement.
It's okay.
Anyway, learning about project management is a excruciating.
The PMBOK is terrible, and that's all I'll say about that.
The PMBOK is. I would read Champions.
I am doing it because there's a certification that I'm trying to get for my resume. So that's.
I know you will actually be more of a certified project manager than I will.
Yeah, the Illustrator stuff is way more fun. I played a couple of board games. I played a board game called Vikings on Board, which it's got lovely components. It's a worker placement.
You've been playing a lot of worker placement lately.
Yeah, it's a worker placement action selection game. It's terrible. Don't buy it. It's garbage.
It's terrible. The parts are nice, but the game is trash.
It's beautiful, but the game is garbage.
That's too bad.
I couldn't stand it for a lot of reasons. The worst one is that once you've placed like 6 of your people, because there's like 11 action spaces, and where you place them is where if you place them near the front, you get to go earlier in the next round. If you place them near the back, the actions are more powerful, but they are
sure.
You go later.
So you're sacrificing position for potency.
The problem is some of those actions aren't nearly as powerful as you think they are. Also, once like 7 actions or 6 actions have been taken, sometimes there's nothing to do.
Oh, so that's bad.
It just feels it's not a badly designed game, like there's strategy and things like that there, but it's boring. It's frustrating and it's not fun.
Yeah, I mean worker placement is not fun when it's your time that you can't place your worker somewhere.
I mean, you can place it somewhere, but it feels like you don't get to do anything.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Like if you in the games that sometimes I really like, and still one of my favorite worker placements is Manhattan Project.
It's good,
right? Yeah. Because that's a game like, man, there's always a place to put a worker. Like there's always something on that damn board to do. And
you're like extra.
Oh, I know. I gotta
fun.
crack I gotta punch. I have to punch all the pieces for that game. I have it. I'm gonna need you to come out later at some point in the future.
I own it too. You can just come here and we can play it.
Sure.
It's sitting behind you on the shelf.
Yeah.
And all my stuff's punched out. The other game I played was Chicago Express. So Chicago Express is a gateway game for the 18XX Railroad games. Now, those 18XX games, they take hours to play.
Sure.
Chicago Express takes 45 minutes.
Yeah, hence the word express.
Yes, it's a ton of fun. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. It has a lot of... So, it's a bidding game, and and a building these railroads game. Except you're not building your own railroads; you're building the railroads that are from these different companies. So there's the goal of the game is to have the most money at the end of the game. You are auctioning off shares in these railroad companies. There's only so many shares for these railroad companies. As you build out these railroads, it increases their worth. There's like a Euro score track on the outside,
Sure, okay.
but that's how much money they're worth. Now, there are these 3 dials on the right side. Those are the actions you can take. You can either auction a share of a company.
Okay.
You can build railroads, which are these cool railroads. The components are nice. Or you can develop an area that a railroad is on, and that makes the railroads usually worth more money.
Okay.
There's only so many of those actions you can take before a dividend phase comes up. So when the 2 of those dials get hit to red, a dividend phase comes up, and then you reset them. And there's not that many actions. It's like 2 auctions or 3 auctions, like 4 developments, 5 build railroads. Chicago's worth a lot if you get there. It's worth it makes a railroad worth 7 more. So people are trying to build there, but you can split the railroads. You can do all sorts of things. But the goal is really to try to get people to spend more money than you spend on different bids so that you have money left over. But then there's other strategies that you can utilize where you can be like, well, I'm going to auction a share, but I'm not going to do anything because I don't want anyone to get another share because I don't have any money. Like say I got $3 and you have like 20.
Right.
Like you can outbid me for 4 and get a share, which is worth a lot.
Yeah.
So I can just be like, well, I'm going to push the auction thing so there's less auctions that can happen. I'm not going to do anything, but I'm going to do that. Like, there's things that you can do like that. The gameplay is real quick. It's real fun. I really enjoy it. I highly recommend it if you've always wanted to get into those rail building games. I liked it a lot. But I like that bidding mechanic. That bidding mechanic is a ton of fun.
That's interesting.
Cool.
There you go. That's what I did. I made a movie. Rob posted in the Slack room.
You made another movie?
No, but that movie that I made, it got nominated. It got nominated for 5 awards.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, so
fun.
Also, Rob posted it. It's a movie that I got a writing credit, an assistant director credit, and sound. I was the boom mic operator. But yeah, it's cool. I can't wait to see if we win anything on Thursday.
Cool.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'll let you know next week if we win anything.
Yeah.
That's what I've done. I suppose we should go then.
Yeah, we could probably bolt out of here and do some after show.
Yeah, so let's do some Patreon shoutouts. It's the Royal Court this week, everybody. Eileen Barnes, the Duchess of Pandas Talking Games. Andrew Dacey, the Warden of Whiskies. Andy Olson, the Duke of Dice. Brian Kurtz, the Royal Doctor of Physic. Christopher Gray, the Spy Master of MMP. Craig, the Lord of One Name. Donnie Harville, the Lord of the Slack Room. Eric Bont, the Duke of Gators and the Lord of Beefness. I saw a beefness reference in the...
I saw several beefness references
I was talking about flat beef muffins or something like that in response to blueberry muffins that were being made. I'm like,
that doesn't sound right.
I know, right? GM Gerrymander, the Lord of the After Show. Jared Rasher, the Scribe of MMP. Jesse Edmond, the Royal Doctor. Jim Likes Games, the Royal Merchant. By the way, you should buy it. Jim's Games. They're fantastic.
I got to talk to Jim. We got some stuff.
Yeah, we do. John C. LeMay, the Guard at the End of the World. John Carney, the Court Necromancer. Kevin Lovecraft, the Royal Beard. Merrick Blackman, the Royal D&D Reviewer. Mike Dinos, the Inquisitive Mark. P.K. Sullivan, the Queen's Royal Rocketeer. Richard Wyatt, the Captain of the Royal Airship Fleet. Rob Eversado, the Gauntlet of the Queen. Schmitty, the Keeper of the Labyrinth. Toby Sennett, the Baron of Britannia. And Todd Crapper, the Prophet of Probability. And also the best name in gaming.
There you go.
There we go.
Well, that's not his title from us.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone for listening tonight.
If you are free Tuesday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's time, come join us live on Twitch where you can chat with other listeners in the ever awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
Did you just click and point and wink?
Yeah.
Oh, the finger gun.
Finger guns!
Wow. If you cannot make it to the live show, you should check out our podcast each week wherever you get your podcasts. You could also take a listen to some of the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Bone Stone and Obsidian, Pandas Talking Games, Cypher Speak with Darcy and Troy, whenever they come back, The Gnomecast, Zhang Yu Hustle, She's a Super Geek, and Bonus Experience. You can and should also check out our sibling podcasts, Tabletop Bellhop, The Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
After you have set the scale for your campaign, you can reach us directly by hitting us up on the old-fashioned emails, mmp@misdirectedmark.com. Check out the super, the amazing, the wonderful Facebook group that we have. Woo! Woo!
I don't even know what to do with that. More finger guns, apparently.
There we go.
More awkward finger guns.
And hit us up on Twitter. The show, the network is @misdirectedmark. He is at Robert M. Everson. He is the Light 101, and I am DNA Phil.
Also, if you want to just get in touch directly with the chief, you can just go at Flatburn, I think,
Yeah.
on Twitter.
Yep.
I'm my review's coming up.
Yeah.
So I'm really I'm really pushing the
There you go.
Facebook group hard.
Did we get a quarterly review?
We probably
Oh,
should.
yeah.
Since when did that happen?
Yeah,
right.
Robin sent us out. There's gonna be quarterly reviews. So
Wow.
yeah, make sure you're
Well,
Man.
if you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can and should support our Patreon campaigns. Please send us monies. MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/SassGeek. Zhangu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhangu Hustle. And last but certainly not least is Bonus Experience at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. Patrons of MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, which we haven't had one of those in a long time.
No.
Pandas Talking Game bonus outtakes and other special releases.
Well, this has been a Misdirected Mark production. The media arm of Encoded Designs. Since my quarterly review is coming up, I probably won't be on the show anymore. Mic drop.
we out.